ladies, how are you doing? Welcome to Naya Sim or Cimnanya. If this is your first time of coming across this channel, sweetheart, smash that subscribe button, turn your notification so you are notified each time I upload, and please give this video a thumb up. I appreciate you all so much, and I'm saying shout out to every one of you for the support you all shower me here with. I am grateful, and you all are super sweet. So today we'll be talking something very important, and it's about a video a Ugandan lady made. She was saying, why is it that her country is being labeled the third world country? Not just only her country. Most African countries are called third world countries. And then I am saying that it is amazing how the Westerners wake up to call Africans third world countries when they are living off Africa. And I am urging like the African government to simply wake up and say no to giving them resources so they can feel, because they really do not. When you go to the media and all that, all you see is that Africans are poor. I mean, there is nothing good about them, but they are living off Africa. So it is also time to displace them. Stop giving them all the resources. Let's see how they are going to survive, because they say it is survivor, and they have been all these years surviving on Africans and also calling them poor. Let them feel how it feels to be poor. Let's get into this video.
Why did they label my country a third world country? Someone tell me why. Is it because of the community? Is it because my neighbor's child is my child? Is it because of the organic food that is so accessible and affordable and nutritious? Is it because of the multicultural kind of society that we have? Let's talk about community, by the way. Do you know that if I'm going to get married, my neighbors, my relatives, everyone concerned is going to gather around and then contribute financially, and even after contributing financially on the day of the function, of the celebration, they're gonna turn up, they're gonna pull up with amazing gifts that are so functional. Tell me why my country is a third world country. Do you know that we have so many languages in my country, but we still have community? I imagine if we just had one language that was unifying us, how much more community would we have? There is no way I'll go hungry when I'm in Uganda, because I know I can go to a shop and borrow something and pay back later. It's a rapport we create. It's something we create that money cannot describe. That your neighbor can trust you even when you've just come to the neighborhood for the first time. Tell me why my country is a third world country. Huh? There's no one living in a place for over a week and not know who my neighbor is and how they are doing. We may not be talking about Gucci. We may not be talking about Prada. We may not be talking about the latest Valentino. But I know how my neighbor is doing. Lord, the TBB, where am I even going? Komansina. Why is my country a third world country? I don't know if you hear me or not. The trains are shouting. What criteria did you use to label most countries that have the things that hold more value, third world countries? Things that appeal to the soul. Community, organic food supply, availability for one another. What criteria did you use? I've even taken the wrong turn. Why is my country a third world country? I don't know if you hear me or not. The trains are shouting.
I am so glad this creator's video came through my FYP, because it triggered a discussion I've been wanting to have. We've been lied to. We've been bamboozled. We've been told that Africa is full of third world countries that are impoverished and rural and disease-ridden, and that's simply not true. I work with a gentleman who is from Africa. He has family there, his children live there, he's taught there, and I, as a mentor teacher, was getting him acquainted with our instructional model, and I wanted to get to know him better, so I started asking him about where he's from and his life experiences, and he introduced me to a video called The Africa That They Don't Show You, and it blew my mind. So I want to show you. Of course, after seeing this video, I got very interested in finding out what are the poverty rates in these countries like, because they look so well developed and beautiful. So are they anything like ours? Let's check it out. To keep this video short, I'm going to compare the poverty rates of 3 African countries to several U.S. states. So coming in at number 3, Botswana. Botswana has a poverty rate of 19.3%, meaning that 19.3% of their population is living below the poverty line. Well, how does that compare to the 4 states in our country with the highest poverty rates? Well, Mississippi has the highest at 19.58%. That's a whopping 0.28% higher than Botswana. Louisiana coming in second, New Mexico third, and then West Virginia at 17.1%. Interesting how similar they are to a country that we've been told is a third world country. Next is Tunisia at 15.2%. How does that compare to the poverty rates of states in our country? Well, we know Mississippi has a higher poverty rate than Tunisia, and so does Louisiana, New Mexico, West Virginia, Kentucky, Arkansas, Alabama, DC, and Oklahoma. Wow. That's 8 states and a district. And lastly, and this is my favorite part, Morocco has a poverty rate of 4.8%. Now take a wild guess at the poverty rate of the entire United States according to the 2022 U.S. Census Bureau data. I'll give you a second. If you guessed 11.5%, you'd be correct. We have over twice the poverty rate as Morocco, a place we were told was extremely poor. Which seems suspect to me considering the United States GDP is $26.8 trillion, and becomes even more suspect when you learn that Morocco's GDP is $139 billion. Don't worry, I did the calculations for you. That's 0.5% of the U.S. GDP. In fact, the U.S. GDP is 193 times the GDP of Morocco, and yet somehow we can't figure out how to have a lower poverty rate than a country we've been told is a third world country? So I second the original creator. Why is her country being labeled as a third world country? Why do you think they might want us to believe that about them? Could it have anything to do with the way that they look, or the color of their skin, or the way that they choose to live within their cultures? Or it's feeling real reminiscent of when colonizers used to call indigenous peoples savages.
Why did they label my country a third world country? Someone tell me why. Is it because of the community? Is it because my neighbor's child is my child? Is it because of the organic food that is so accessible and affordable and nutritious? Is it because of the multicultural kind of society that we have?
Too often the images of Africa that we see are white saviors going out there to save their children from poverty. But could you imagine if they were sending their rich and privileged to our country to save our children from our poverty? Could you imagine how offended we might be by that? Yeah, let that sink in. I've tagged both creators in this video, so check them out.
Why did they label my country a third world country? Someone tell me why.
So I actually believe that I have the answer to this question.
So I believe there are 3 main reasons that contribute to this term third world. The first being the Cold War. Now, if you need a quick refresher of the Cold War was basically an arms race between the United States and the USSR to see who could most effectively control their sphere of influence, as the war was based on differing political ideologies. So the term third world came from basically those countries who did not pick a side during the Cold War to either align itself with the United States or the USSR. Funny enough, these countries normally had a lack of resources or a bit of political instability. Even funnier is that all of these countries also had colonial pasts that influenced and created these instabilities. The second reason that I believe these countries got these negative connotations is because of something called white man's burden. So basically, white man's burden said that because white people were seen to be as the peak of what it is to be civilized, then it is their duty, given honestly by God, to civilize other societies. And lastly, there is modernization theory. Modernization theory and white man's burden, in my opinion, kind of work hand in hand, as modernization theory says that the, canon for what is a modernized society is how much and how well that society has industrialized. So any of the countries on earth that are using more traditional or pastoral practices are seen as backwards or third world due to their lack of industrialization. So all in all, due to the conflicts between the United States and the USSR, countries are labeled third world due to their decision to not pick a side within the Cold War, a racist ideology of white man's burden, as well as modernization theory.
With over 200,000 likes, this creator asks why her country, Uganda, is considered part of the third world.
Why did they label my country a third world country? Someone tell me why.
And it's been reposted and duetted again with tens of thousands of additional likes, hundreds of thousands of additional views, along with comments with thousands of likes that say things like, they label your country as a third world country to brainwash us into falsely thinking that we are superior. What you describe in Uganda challenges capitalism, so we're told that your way of living is wrong because it's a threat to those who run capitalist systems. Or they want everyone to think the US is the best, so we don't leave and seek a better life in Uganda.
Third world country? Someone tell me why.
Because the countries like America that are actually struggling don't want to admit it.
The countries that are actually struggling, like America, don't want to admit it. No, that's wrong. People think Uganda is a third world country because Uganda is unusually poor and it's underdeveloped. I'll make that case with 5 separate arguments. First, the people of Uganda lack consistent access to safe and clean drinking water and sanitation facilities. Second, the people of Uganda have insufficient food, and that's most clearly seen in the children of Uganda, who are malnourished, often to the point of death, or to the point that their growth is stunted. Third, electricity. Uganda uses very little electricity per person, implying again that they are not a developed, productive, and rich country. Fourth, money. Ugandans earn relatively little money per person. And fifth, the Human Development Index is a measure published by the United Nations where Uganda ranks as one of the least developed countries in the world. First, a document from the Global Waters Report, which is associated with U.S. aid, says that Uganda is designated as a high priority country in terms of having access to clean water. Quote, as of 2021, 56% of Ugandans had access to basic water services, and only 20% had access to basic sanitation services. And here, sanitation is the services that make sure your water is clean and safe to drink by separating human waste from your water. At the institutional level, only 9% of healthcare facilities have access to basic sanitation. 61% have access to a basic water supply, and 17% have no access to water. That's saying that 17% of healthcare facilities don't have access to water. And the idea that many healthcare facilities lack access to clean water is echoed in a UNICEF report. This is the United Nations International Child's Emergency Fund. Talking about Uganda, they say, quote, mothers and babies continue to be vulnerable, with neonatal mortality affecting 1 in 37 newborns. Nearly half, 46% of health facilities did not have access to clean water or sanitation, creating a significant risk for the spread of infections among mothers and babies. 42% of primary schools have no access to water, with an average of 72 pupils sharing one latrine. Also, the urban poor pay 22% of their income to access water from vendors, and the financial burden of accessing water usually rests on women. This results in incidents of domestic and gender-based violence related to water access. An article from Vice in 2015 discusses some personal anecdotes related to the dangers that women experience due to the shared bathroom and water facilities. Quote, in Uganda, only 19% of the population has access to improved sanitation, meaning a toilet that is not shared and has a mechanism that separates waste from human contact. And, quote, according to a 2012 study conducted by a team of 6 researchers, academics, and NGO workers from Kampala and Zurich, 78% of the people they talked to from 1,500 slum households shared a toilet with an average of 6 households. Of those, about 10% shared a toilet with up to 100 households. The researchers photographed 1,500 communal latrines and rated them for cleanliness, observing that 20% of them had considerable amount of solid material, paper, excrement, construction materials, big puddles, and liquids on the toilet, making it difficult to use the toilet without getting dirty. So water and the systems to deliver and clean water are a big part of basic infrastructure, and Uganda seems to be lacking in that regard. In terms of food, a UNICEF report says that between 2013 and 2015, it's estimated that more than 500,000 young Ugandan children died. Nearly half of those deaths were associated with undernutrition. Malnutrition threatens to destroy a generation of children in Uganda. More than 1/3 of all young children, 2.4 million, are stunted. And here stunted means that they don't grow to their full height due to a lack of nutrition in childhood. The damage caused by stunting is irreversible. Half of children under 5 and 1/4 of childbearing age women are anemic. Anemia is a condition that can develop when you don't have sufficient iron in your diet, and it will make you low energy and weak and potentially kill you. The UN World Food Program has a map of the incidence of insufficient food consumption, and Uganda here in red and orange, two of the highest levels, stands out on the map of Africa. So two of the most basic elements of life, food and water, are a substantial challenge for a significant portion of the population of Uganda. The third item on my list is electricity, and you can think of electricity usage as being a proxy for how much industrial and developed activity is going on within a country. Here you can just barely see that this table is sorted by kilowatt hours per person per year. Basically, how much electricity does the average person in the country use? At the very bottom, we have Gaza. They use the least amount of electricity out of all the countries on this list. But here, 17th from the bottom, is Uganda. Now, maybe your intuition is to say, well, maybe it's part of their culture. They don't like electricity. And maybe that's true, but probably not. Most people like air conditioning and heaters and electric lights and computers and manufacturing and so on. And that's why it's very poor and underdeveloped countries at the bottom of this list. People would use more electricity if they could. In terms of money, Uganda is one of the lowest income countries in the world. So if you take GDP, purchasing power parity, GDP means the gross domestic product, the total amount of goods and services in dollars that are produced by a country in a year, adjusted for the cost of living in that country. That's what purchasing power parity means. And then you divide that by the population of the country. That's what per capita means. GDP, PPP per capita in Uganda is about $3,000. So that's like saying on average, each person is making $3,000 a year. And that puts Uganda in 172nd out of 191 countries of the world. And finally, in terms of the Human Development Index, which is a measure published by the United Nations that represents the healthiness of a population, the education system in a country, and the standard of living for the people in that country, Uganda is here, rated 166th in the most recent year out of 191 countries. So why is Uganda considered a third world country? Well, it's poor. There's not a lot of economic output, and the citizens regularly struggle with the necessities to survive. I'm not saying all this to try to be mean to Uganda or to the original creator. I think, the same as other comments on the original video, that the way the creator expresses herself is like a poem. Her video is like a spoken word poem, and it's very interesting to listen to. And it's interesting to look at the other videos on her account and get a perspective on a life that may be unfamiliar to you. Instead, I'm creating the video to try to respond to the people in the comments or the people in other videos who are trying to push the narrative that actually, Uganda's they don't have it that bad, nothing compared to the United States, and things like that. Those ideas are so silly and so ludicrous and so completely ignorant of the difference in wealth between countries like the United States and Uganda that I am trying to call attention to why people consider a country like Uganda to be a third world country. It's not because they're racist, it's because of the factors I mentioned and others beside.
Why did they label my country a third world country? Someone tell me why.
Oh, I know this one. I don't know your specific country. You didn't actually say it in the video. But my husband and I just went to India, and there's an extreme level of poverty there alongside extreme levels of wealth. It's a very large dichotomy. But in my mind, I think of it as a third world country. And it made me realize, why do I think that? Like, we saw some very extreme levels of poverty, which you reference in your video, some examples of like why you think that you're being labeled as third world versus like not first world, I suppose. So I did a quick Google search related to my trip to India, not related to your video, but that's available for me now to have the answer. It actually goes back to the times of the Cold War. So first world countries were countries America specifically started it, and allies of America during the Cold War. So like Britain. And then second world countries, did you even know there was a thing, second world countries? Because that's originally why I started the Google search. Second world countries were countries that supported Russia, so allies of Russia during the Cold War. And then third world countries were just neutral parties, so countries that were not either allied with America or allied with Russia. Now we can talk about whether or not it's because of financial reasons, if it was political, or if it's just because you didn't really have any reason to be involved one way or another. But that's really where third world country label originated from, was in the Cold War, if you were just not allied with either America or Russia during the Cold War. So I get that now, like, everyone thinks of it as like impoverished nations or people that are, it's got a connotation of being lesser than. Not that I necessarily believe that or that I'm implying that with regards to your country, but I think that's what you're meaning when you're asking this. But if someone says that your country is like a third world country, perhaps now it's evolved to mean like an impoverished nation, but that's not really where it originally came from. So, fun facts.
Someone tell me why.
The reason why they call countries third world, second world, and first world comes from the Cold War originally. First world countries were countries that were part of the Western Bloc or capitalist countries. Second world countries were countries that are part of the Eastern Bloc or communist countries. And third world countries were countries that were neutral in regards to the Cold War. However, generally today when people say third world or they say first world, they're talking in terms of development.
So this is all I got from this video, and the truth is that a lot of people have, a lot of people have so many things to say about this, and and I took my time to I saw so many other videos, I saw people's comments and all that, and wise majority, like not just Uganda, majority African countries are labeled third world countries. And when you ask them, they say it's because of the high poverty rate, lack of resources, and unstable financial standing, right? And then, that's why most times when people hear some certain things about Africa without making research and they say it, I do not blame anybody, because the media has always tagged Africans like poor. I mean, there is nothing, most times there is nothing good about Africa according to the colored people, people live in the huts, people live on trees and all that. People do not have electricity, they do not have water, and or they lack money. And these are also most of the first world, whatever they are calling themselves, are also experiencing all this. There are so many cities in the United States or in Europe that are living so much in poverty that are even African GDP. Some countries in Africa or some cities in Africa, their GDP are more better than them, but you will never see them put that out. But then it is okay and all the time try to gaslight black people, Africans, they live in poverty and all that. And the truth is that some of them travel to all these countries and do not want to ever go back to their own countries. And then they are not even showing you that great, just like when you come to Lagos, Nigeria, and you are like, I remember somebody asking me, okay, there was a time I traveled to Nigeria and somebody was, the person saw my stories on Instagram. So the person was like, oh my God, I saw places that you went to and are they in Lagos? I said, of course, that is Lagos. They said, you can imagine that the person was asking me, why is it that they always show us something different from the television? This was this exact question this person told me. I said, sometimes or most times, do not listen to what the media is telling you. You can do your own research. I mean, the person was in awe. I'm seeing my stories. The person was like, it is also like this place. I was like, yeah, I don't have to tell you it is also like this place, but you can see that it is a place you would love to visit. So what am I saying in essence? The truth is that most of all these countries, it is also the audacity. Most of these countries live. And if it is not for African countries, they will not be alive to this very moment. They will not live. They will not be breathing. Most of what they are from Africa, African countries. So the reality is that not until Africans wake up and also they see these third world countries they call Africans. We should make them feel how we feel, like, let them feel how it feels to, be called that, because this is exactly what is going to happen real soon. If African leaders wake up, let's displace them a little bit, because we have given them so much of our resources that they sit back and they feel like, it is all our world. Yeah, they say it is their world, but African leaders have to tell them that it is not their world. It is not our world, because we are the ones with the resources. See you all in my next video. Bye for now.